In 1969, Boeing built the 747. A plane so big, so audacious, people called it impossible right up until it flew. The engineers who built it obsessed over rivets, over metal fatigue, over the weight of a single bolt. Boeing didn't just build planes. It helped build the machines that carried men to the moon. Fast forward. A door plug blows off a Boeing jet at 16,000 feet, mid-flight, in front of passengers filming it on their phones. 2 of the company's own whistleblowers are dead within 53 days of each other. And the executive who ran the place during the worst of it walked away with a compensation package worth tens of millions of dollars. So what happened? How does a company built on engineering precision become a punchline, a complete dumpster fire of an aerospace giant? This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's a paper trail. And it starts not on a factory floor, but in a boardroom, decades ago. 1997, Boeing merges with McDonnell Douglas. On paper, Boeing swallowed the smaller company. Culturally, it would prove far more complicated. Senior McDonnell Douglas executives gained significant influence inside the new Boeing, and over the following years, the company's management philosophy shifted toward efficiency, cost discipline, and shareholder returns, and away from the engineering-first culture that built the 747. In 2001, Boeing moved its corporate headquarters from Seattle, where the engineers were, where the factories were, to Chicago, a city with no Boeing factory at all. Boeing cited strategic and logistical reasons for the move. But symbolically, the message was hard to miss. The people signing the checks were now a plane ride away from the people building the planes. That distance matters. When leadership stops hearing the shop floor, priorities shift. Quarterly numbers. Stock price. Shareholder returns. This isn't a story about accountants secretly designing airplanes. It's about what happens when the people measuring success stop measuring the things that keep an airplane safe. Here's a fact worth sitting with. Between 2013 and 2019, Boeing spent $43.5 billion buying back its own stock, a figure confirmed across SEC filings and financial reporting. Buybacks aren't illegal. They reduce shares outstanding, boost earnings per share, and return capital to shareholders, including executives whose bonuses are tied to stock performance. The question isn't whether it was legal. It was. The question is what Boeing chose to prioritize while tens of billions flowed to shareholders instead of into the next generation of aircraft. Boeing's SEC filings from this period never break out 737 MAX research and development as its own line item. It's folded into broader categories. That doesn't prove fraud, but it leaves a legitimate question hanging over the whole decade. How much engineering investment was actually going into the plane millions of people were about to fly? Because instead of designing a new aircraft from the ground up, Boeing chose the cheaper, faster path, a deep re-engineering of the decades-old 737 airframe, fitted with larger, more fuel-efficient engines and rebranded as the 737 MAX. It let Boeing compete with Airbus without the enormous cost and years-long timeline of a clean-sheet design. But repositioning bigger engines on that older airframe changed how the plane handled in certain flight conditions. Compensating for that required a new piece of software. That software had a name. MCAS. MCAS, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, could receive its triggering input from a single angle of attack sensor, and under certain conditions could repeatedly command the aircraft's nose down, correcting for the aerodynamic effect of those repositioned engines. A single point of failure, given enormous authority over the plane. MCAS wasn't adequately disclosed to pilots. It wasn't included in the manuals and training the way a system with that kind of authority should have been. Why? Because airlines had made clear that if the new 737 required simulator training, they'd reconsider the order. Simulator time costs airlines money. Keeping MCAS's full scope out of view kept the sale, and kept training costs at zero. Federal prosecutors would later allege that two of Boeing's 737 MAX technical pilots deceived the FAA's Aircraft Evaluation Group about MCAS's power and scope, information that could have changed how the FAA assessed pilot training requirements. This isn't speculation. It's a documented federal case. In January 2021, the U.S. Department of Justice charged Boeing with conspiracy to defraud the United States over exactly this conduct. Boeing avoided prosecution by signing a deferred prosecution agreement and paying over $2.5 billion in fines, compensation, and penalties. In 2024, following the Alaska Airlines blowout, the Justice Department determined Boeing had violated the terms of that agreement. Lion Air Flight 610, October 2018. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, March 2019. 346 people dead. Investigators identified MCAS and the surrounding chain of design, certification, and training failures as central factors in both crashes. In each case, pilots fought a system whose full authority they didn't understand. Boeing's early public response leaned toward blaming pilot error, drawing sharp criticism from investigators and victims' families. Internal company messages, later made public, showed employees describing the plane's development in scathing terms, including one exchange calling it designed by clowns and supervised by monkeys. 5 years later, a different failure. This time, it wasn't MCAS. NTSB investigators found that 4 bolts needed to secure the door plug were missing when the plane left the factory, a manufacturing, training, and oversight breakdown. 8 people suffered minor injuries. Nobody died, but the pattern was unmistakable. Different failure, same underlying culture. Now meet the men who raised the alarm before any of this became public. John Barnett spent nearly 3 decades at Boeing, most of it as a quality manager on the 787 line. He filed repeated complaints alleging defective parts were installed and that production pressure led workers to skip inspection steps. Boeing disputed his allegations. On March 9, 2024, in the middle of giving deposition testimony in his case against Boeing, John Barnett was found dead in his truck in a hotel parking lot. The Charleston County coroner ruled his death a suicide. His family has publicly questioned that finding. That's a dispute on the record, not an established fact. 53 days later, Joshua Dean died. Dean was a quality auditor at Spirit AeroSystems, the supplier that manufactures Boeing's fuselages, including the section containing the door plug that failed on the Alaska Airlines flight. Dean had flagged manufacturing defects on the 737 MAX line before he was terminated in April 2023. On May 1, 2024, he died after a sudden, fast-moving infection. He was in his 40s. 2 whistleblowers. 2 deaths. 53 days apart. That timing is disturbing. But timing is not proof of murder, and there is no established evidence that Boeing caused either man's death. The real question isn't were they silenced. The evidence doesn't support that. The real question is, why were so many people inside and around Boeing raising the same alarms in the first place? Now look at what happened to the executives. Dennis Muhlenberg, CEO during the MCAS certification failures and both crashes, was forced out in December 2019. Contemporary financial reporting, including Reuters and CNBC, valued his accumulated stock awards, pension, and other compensation at roughly $80 million upon departure. Dave Calhoun took over promising a culture reset. He was still CEO when the door plug blew out in January 2024. Boeing's own proxy filing shows his 2023 compensation was valued at nearly $33 million, adjusted to $24.8 million once falling stock value was factored in, with potential retirement benefits worth more than $44 million. 2 men who raised concerns about safety and quality are dead. Meanwhile, while whistleblowers were sounding alarms, Boeing's senior executives continued collecting compensation packages worth tens of millions of dollars. That contrast isn't a coincidence of bad luck. It's what the incentive structure was built to produce. Boeing didn't fall apart because its engineers forgot how to build airplanes. It was a chain of decisions, about cost, about deadlines, about training, about what got measured and what got ignored. Aircraft don't care about quarterly earnings. Gravity doesn't care about stock price. Engineering doesn't forgive shortcuts. Void ledger. The numbers always leave a trail.